silent, and all right.
Cool.
Anyway, do we want to redo that intro? I thought that was a good intro, so I
Nah,
think we should
it's
just...
fine. It's
Okay.
fine. We're recording locally, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, okay. All right, so this week wrap up, I just wanted to say I was talking about Razer and my Razer products and everything, and so they sent it back to me, and it indeed was the mouse ribbon cable. So, I was like, I'm going to open this thing up before I send it back, because they were like asking me to send it in. They're trying to get me to update drivers and all this stuff. I'm like, guys, I know that this ribbon cable for my mouse pad just like fell out in shipping. It just slipped right out. So I opened the thing up. I found these really, really small screws and opened up the whole thing. And of course, the ribbon cable is just laying there,
That's funny.
So,
did you hook it back up?
what's that?
Did you hook it back up?
Yeah, I hooked it back up. Everything
Okay,
works fine. It's great.
There you go.
Anyway, Camp Mograph.
Camp Mograph.
Camp Mograph. There's a couple things that I wanted to talk about. Number one, I guess, Matt, we've decided on a ticket closing date, correct?
Yeah. Well, we once we started really thinking about it, we realized that it's going to be hard to have people buying tickets up until the last day when we're trying to prep everything. So we're actually closing down ticket sales September. Let me get the exact date. September 6th. So September 6th will be your last day to get tickets to Camp Mograph. We need to have that good month worth of time in order to get all the preps and everything like that.
Yeah.
Get everything ordered.
Yeah.
So you've got until September 6th to order your Camp Mograph tickets.
And Otoy is a Village sponsor.
Yes, they are.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jules.
Really appreciate that. That's gonna be awesome. One of the camps is gonna be flying the flag there for you, and winning tug of wars and such for you. So that'll be a lot of fun. One of the things I want to talk about too is if you're in a studio and you're looking to get a group of people going, and you need to talk to your boss or something, and you need information, just contact us. We've got tons of info we can send. We'll even get on a phone call with your boss and be like, yeah, totally. Yeah. You got to get these guys.
This is a great idea.
Yeah. And the contest is still going on too. The Monkey Legs contest, that's going until the end of the month. We've got some entries. Brian Beam sent me some stuff he's working on. A couple other people are working on projects. And even if you're not going to go, I'm going to put it out there. If you enter, I'm going to make sure that you get one of our new shirts. That Render is Fire shirt. I will send you one, I promise. And that's about it. We want more entries so we can have a cool little cut music video there. So the only other thing I have on the week wrap up is the new channel trailer, and I'm going to go ahead and play it. If it's not playing to the stream, then let me know, because I just changed a bunch of audio settings, and I can fix it on the fly. It's all good. So check this out, new Mograph.com channel trailer. Mograph.com, an online resource for motion graphic artists. Start your week with the Mograph podcast. Industry news, interviews with your favorite artists, and terrible humor. Watch live shows and interviews from Mograph events like NAB, SIGGRAPH, Half-Res, and local meetups. Our Mograph Talks feature live demos and motivation from artists all around the world.
Sometimes you gotta make stuff that you're not gonna put on your reel, and I'm not here to judge.
What if Rick and Morty show up for the countdown at midnight? That's where I peaked in life, in my career.
We gotta stop this thing, Rick! It's gonna kill us all!
Hear from the people that create your software, design your render engines, and artists that are changing the face of modern motion graphics.
You get that render done. Yeah, you better frame what?
Mograph tutorials and online classes will teach you about Cinema 4D, After Effects, as well as other popular software and render engines.
Throw in the HDR Studio, take the render settings, pick the HDR, put in a reflection, and gorgeous.
Branch into new software. Learn time-saving tips, techniques, workflows, and lessons that'll keep you up to date in the world of motion design.
Oh, brother, those are some of my favorite elves.
I love projects that scare me. When our art director comes to us and asks for something that I had never done before, man, it gets me pumped.
Join the conversation in our live sessions. Check out our plugins, or join the hundreds of daily active users in our Slack channel for technical help, advice, contests, or just to joke around.
Real nice banana.
Yeah, that's so funny. All right. I'm going to live forever.
Subscribe today and get the latest updates on our YouTube and other social media channels.
Take all your dreams and just do it!
We don't care how you get here, folks. Just get here.
Subscribe to Mograph.com. So there it is.
Yay!
So
Good work, Dave.
We got that done. Thank goodness. I've been like working on that for a long time because we have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of like hours and interviews and all that kind of stuff. It's so hard to go through all that. Yeah. Sorry if I blew your ears out on the live stream. I completely like mastered and like compressed that entire promo, so it's gonna be super loud. I apologize for your ears. All right, so let's get into some Ravcock. What's your flavor?
What's your flavor?
So we got a lot to talk about. We've got Octane X. I guess we'll start with that. That's going to be
all right,
the big one. Octane X. It's Octane built from the ground up in metal. It's for the all new Mac Pro. So this will run on the on other cards. Is it just AMD or is it all other?
Oh, it's everything.
Everything. Okay, cool.
So you have Intel integrated graphics it'll run on. It'll run on Apple GPUs. It'll run on the iPad Pro. And it'll work the same across all of them.
So you're building the entire thing to run off of metal specifically, like, so I'm just trying to wrap my head around it. Like, so does AMD, you'll have to excuse my ignorance on this, but AMD naturally works with metal, is that correct?
Yes, so Apple's, in the Apple ecosystem, metal is like DirectX. All the vendors that want to work in the Apple ecosystem want to support metal, so you actually have AMD, Intel, at one point NVIDIA, I think it still supports some sort of metal drivers. And that's basically, Apple works with the vendors to make sure that they work correctly with the metal API, so that if you write, let's say we wrote Octane for metal, which is what we're doing, then it would work with all metal certified graphics cards. And that includes AMD, that includes Intel, but we don't have to do anything specifically for those vendors.
Gotcha. That's nice.
Although in practice, you kind of do. You're optimizing for the different cards, and we're already looking at how we can boost performance on those MacBooks, for example, that just have those Intel integrated graphics. But yeah, from an API level, it supports everything. And it is a complete rewrite. Like, there's not one line of CUDA code that we can reuse for that purpose. So we started years ago rewriting Octane at first for OpenCL, and then we were thinking, okay, we'll do a shortcut, do AMD CUDA, which I think you guys actually played with for a bit when we had it at SIGGRAPH on that iMac. And Apple was, we've had a long relationship with Apple. We couldn't talk about it really until a couple of weeks ago when they announced all this stuff. And so we were, finally, like a couple of years back, I guess, we really committed to the idea of, okay, we're just going to have to write it line by line. We started on that, and we're far enough along now that we kind of know when it'll get done, which will be this year, at least in preview form. And then Apple was, announced it for us, which was awesome at the keynote.
Yeah, that was cool. That was cool.
That was cool.
Yeah,
that was great.
Yeah.
Tokyo Megaplex asks how metal compares to CUDA as a language.
It's a lot simpler, in my opinion. Simpler in terms of it's not quite as open. But for me, so we're not using, for example, pointers, which is a form of programming that's very easy to do in CUDA. We're actually taking all that out as we're reporting Octane. Metal does support it, but it's a very nice language. I mean, it's really easy to use, but it just doesn't have the history of CUDA. Us and other GPU programs have been using CUDA for a decade. And metal just isn't as mature as that, but it's getting there, and it's now at the point where, at least for the purposes of Octane, we have everything we need to complete that port. And Apple has been listening to us for a while, and they've actually added things to metal that we asked for. I don't know if I could talk about all those different things, but just from a developer,
that's nice.
It's great to see that, and we don't see that often. So NVIDIA is great at that. Apple's great at that, and those are the two vendors that deal with drivers that I think have really gotten their act together.
So you're basically going to you're writing Octane for basically twice, right?
Yep.
Wow.
It's crazy. That's why we didn't do it sooner.
Are you worried at all? Like, what are the comparable speeds? for like running it on metal versus running it on CUDA. I know a lot of people have been curious about this. And I know, of course, it's going to all depend on the hardware that you're running, you know, like whether you're running an Intel integrated graphics or whether you're running a 2080 Ti, right? You know, of course you're going to have a big difference.
Yeah, the Intel integrated graphics it won't be fast, but it'll work, which is better than what we had before. I think so far, because we're sort of in the middle of this process, we have at least another 6 months before we'd be putting out anything. I think that'd be useful for performance. But we're targeting the end of the year for preview release, very similar to what we did with the RTX preview in March, which was pretty much Octane standalone. Most things are working. You can load up all these scenes. You can start playing around with it. But the things that we've ported over, the tone mapping and the ray tracing stack, and enough to get most of the DirectLight kernels working, looks pretty good. So I think I don't have any exact numbers to share, but it won't be, hopefully it won't be that different for the same price card. I mean, obviously that's kind of what we're targeting, and it will support multi GPU. So if you get that that Mac Pro with 4 GPUs, it'll be 4 times faster, just like normal Octane. But yeah, we're probably months out from having some significant insight into exactly how everything will perform. But probably the third of Octane Bench that does work so far is pretty good. I mean, it almost feels like the same priced AMD card we were testing it on, like the Radeon 7, was pretty comparable to the 2070 or 80, maybe even a little bit faster. But that's just for a small part of the rendering pipeline, so we have a lot more work to do before we can confirm that. And my rough guess is the iPad Pro will be in the 20 to 30 Octane Bench range, which is pretty good for a mobile device.
So are we going to is your idea of using the iPad or a an iDevice or whatever a way of using it as a render node, or is the
or is
thought
it more like
process
Unity
there?
stuff, like game development?
Yeah. So if the way I look at it is, if we go into the trouble of supporting Intel integrated graphics on the MacBook, the iPad Pro, the current one, actually has more graphics power than the MacBook. So you can, I think with iOS 13, you're starting to see, you can use the mouse, you have the bridge keyboard here, which is pretty cool. Actually, I have it right here. So you hook this up to an iPad, and it feels a lot like a computer. So I feel like set props. I feel like it's something where in the not too distant future, I think people might want to look at the iPad Pro as something of a laptop replacement. And also it is, yes, it can be used as a render slave, but it can also be used to do virtual set production and things like that, where if you wanted to run Octane in ARKit, which we could do on the iPad Pro live, that could work. It also can plug into, into what you're doing on your computer as well. So all the second screen stuff is really interesting to me. And it's, in my opinion, I don't think Apple's going to slow down on their GPU development in terms of performance per watt. I think the Apple GPUs are some of the best out there. So I'm sort of betting on that being an important part of Octane's future.
Cool.
Tokyo Megaplex is asking, man, these comments are going so
like
fast.
800 questions, yeah.
Tokyo Megaplex is asking, do you think you'll make Octane plugins for some of the 3D iPad apps, like sculpting ones, or is it just going to be a standalone thing? Yes. Oh,
no,
nice.
It'll be standalone, but we want to provide the SDK to anyone that wants to develop a app around it, very similar to what we've done on the desktop, where we have 20-something DCC integrations. We want to see the same thing on the iPad as well and on iOS. So if you want to build a 3D app, use Octane, same form to fill out on our developer forums, and you can get the SDK and build stuff on it, and we'd love that.
That's awesome.
What about Tesla Rock says, how will Octane, Mac, and PC work together? Is it pretty seamless?
Yeah, I've seen a few people asking questions like this, like what if you're mixing AMD cards, integrated graphics cards, NVIDIA cards? You're talking about 2 different sets of code here with the CUDA and the metal. Is there? I mean, I'm assuming you guys will have that all worked out, but
yes.
I'm sure that causes a major hurdle to overcome.
It is complicated. One of the ways we're addressing it is, we also aren't just doing metal. We are also at the same time porting Octane to Vulkan, and we actually have a cross compiler, which we announced last March, I think, that takes GLSL compute. That's the language that we're actually writing Octane in just once, and then that can cross compile over to metal. It can cross compile to Vulkan. It can go back to CUDA if we needed it to. And so our assumption is that at least on the PC and on the NVIDIA side, and probably on Linux as well. So those are the other 2 platforms, right, that we want to support besides Mac and now, iOS. We would be able to take the Vulkan version of our code and run that on NVIDIA. And that actually is working really nicely. Everything we've ported from CUDA to Vulkan on the same NVIDIA card is a little bit faster, which is great. And that also means that it would be pixel perfect, code complete. So if you wanted to run the latest version of Octane on Linux or Windows with the Vulkan build, and then run that with Octane X on Mac or Metal or iPad, it would all work. They would be basically built from the same code, and they would work with each other over network rendering and the like. And NVIDIA's, to their credit, has given us a huge amount of support for Vulkan, so we actually are able to ship. As of right now, we can sort of ship that code. Hopefully, it'll become even more mature. But that's sort of our plan A, and our plan B is that we can also take all the GLSL code that we're writing and cross-compile that back to CUDA. If we still wanted to support the CUDA path, we wouldn't have to write it in CUDA, the language, but we could still compile it back into that. And we have a lot of experience doing this kind of crazy stuff where, we rebuilt CUDA on top of, AMD's drivers and did that from nothing. So that's the kind of stuff I think we'll figure it out. There's at least 2 good options. So, as we get closer to the end of the year, we'll see which one we want to support for the production version.
It brings up an interesting question because you're going to be supporting Metal and stuff. Ash Styles in the chat says, will this work with an iMac Pro or even the older trash can Macs? I mean, I've got an old 2010 Mac Pro, that I'd love to be able to throw an AMD card in there and, work in Octane. I mean, then it wouldn't be just a
doorstop,
a server right now. Yeah, just basically a giant paperweight.
It should. I mean, I don't know if it'll go all the way back to 2013 Macs, but any 2015 Mac or later should be fine. In theory, I think, based on the stuff we're doing on Metal, if Metal works on 1015 on your Mac, then it should run. I just, we haven't tested far enough, but I think it'll run on a lot of older Macs. My goal is that it runs on my MacBook, which I miss having Octane. Last time Octane ran natively on the Mac was my I think 2013 MacBook Pro, which had an NVIDIA 650M, 13 Octane bench. iPad is 30, so we're but yeah, it's exciting. A lot of there's millions and millions and millions of Macs that have never been able to run Octane since 2013 that'll now be able to run it, and that's pretty cool. That's one of the reasons why we were so excited to make this happen. And to make it happen soon, or relatively soon.
Yeah, it's exciting. You had a bunch of people who were very hesitant about, what's Apple going to do. And then with the announcement of this and the announcement that, Adobe and Maxon and all these other people are also supporting, this, it's like, okay, you have your answer there. I think we're really excited to see the future of this.
Yeah, and as a Mac user, I when they told me a little bit before the event about the new Mac Pro, I was curious myself about how, because I was excited to, when they were sharing the details with us, I was excited like everyone else was. And it's Apple's serious about the Pro space. They really, they came to us, and obviously everyone that was on stage, I think, or in that event, participating in one form or another, was pulled in mainly because Apple was like, we're serious. We know what the apps are. We know what people want to do with this thing. And they convinced us, not that we needed a lot of convincing, to really throw in heavily into this. And we had already, the reason I think we were brought in is because we on our own had been just working so hard on getting Metal to work and all these other solutions. Some of that with a bunch of Apple engineers that we've been talking to for years. But then, it was like, hey, we want to talk about this on the, the keynote. And I was like, great. Great.
So were you working on this before they even talked to you about the Mac Pro? Like, was this your idea from the beginning?
Oh yeah. No, we've been, it was our idea from the time we had announced OpenCL. I think it was in 2015. People were mad, like, where's OpenCL support? And what happened was that Apple canceled it. It was some of the same engineers who were with today told us, we're switching to Metal. Sorry for telling you guys to look at OpenCL. And so we and we didn't immediately switch. Yeah. So it's been a long journey, but I get exactly why Apple would want Metal to be their driver language of choice. They've invested so much in sort of this. You can see where things are going, right? You see the iPad Pro and iPad OS now, and this convergence with Mac. And so this kind of hybrid app doesn't really work if you can't really bring the merge the desktop and mobile APIs. And so that's why I think that there was a big push on their part to really build Metal around the idea of these cross-convergent devices, and that's hard to do. I mean, Microsoft's tried many times to bring Windows and other things to mobile. It hasn't always worked.
Yeah.
So let's see if Apple does it right, but they already have a ton of people in the iPad ecosystem. So,
is there a thought as far as bringing, say, Octane standalone to like an iPad device, like the iPad Pro, like running almost like a virtual version of it online? I don't know. It's just where my brain goes, because we're talking so much about like the running Octane on the iPad and stuff, wouldn't, and with the addition of the keyboard and mouse, like being able to do that, it seems like that would be a big possibility. Of course, then you're talking about, I'm talking about running it virtually, like over the internet or something like that. Yeah.
Well, that already works. We had a link that was up for a while where you could run Octane in a browser, and it was running off of Amazon, and it was kind of cool. It was cool for demos. I mean, we put it out there, and some people used it, but I also think that the problem with the cloud piece is that the GPUs in the cloud and Amazon at the time were like 30, 40 Octane bench. They were K520s. Those are the cheapest ones, and of course now any device, even an iPad, is approaching that speed. So and I don't know if people know this, but the 1 terabyte iPad Pro has 6 gigs of video memory. Most people think it's like 3 to 4 or something, but it's larger. I don't know if you can fully access it, but we're looking into that because that's pretty great. And in the Octane X announcement, in fact, John Carmack called me out on this because he was reading my Twitter feed. He's like, "What's this 100x compression you have in iPad Pro?" And I explained to him, "Hey, we've got ASTC texture compression coming in iOS 13 and in Metal 3, and so you can compress textures way more. Like the texture compression we have on desktop." Which is I think 8-to-1. I think you can go about 10 times that on the on mobile with the ASTC texture. Wow. So you'll be able to squeeze a lot of scenes into an iPad. But the virtual stuff is really cool. I mean, you can always now with Sidecar, you can obviously use your iPad as a wireless second screen. But there's also, I think we're going to try to revisit the idea of having Octane in the cloud, but do it a little differently. So one of the things that we showed in March was headless rendering, where you could take your MacBook Pro, MacBook anything, and just run the tone mapping and pieces of Octane that we already had working on Metal at the time, and then all the shading on a CUDA card that could be anywhere. It could be an IP address, even over Wi-Fi. It was working pretty well. I think it'll work pretty well over 5G to an Amazon GPU or GPU on the render network. So I think the prospects of that could be much more interesting than when we first tried it about 4 or 5 years back.
It's exciting. Is there any when should we expect to see some headless rendering? Because I've been looking forward to that for a while.
Yeah. So we had been sort of pushing forward on having that out this summer. I think the issue with everything that we put out on Metal or even Vulkan is we need rock solid driver support for that to work.
Right.
Apple's provided us enough of that where we're pretty comfortable that we should have the pieces we need to that hopefully this summer, and even possibly start putting out pieces of even if it's maybe an early private beta, some pieces of Octane standalone that we'd want to test on Metal. And by the end of the year, there would be no issues, I think, shipping that. So I think headless rendering we're looking at probably around August or so, maybe sooner. I mean, we have it working. We just need the drivers to really be in a place where we can ship it. And at least Apple is like completely aware of that and working with us, really regularly on making sure that's in place. And on the Vulkan side, NVIDIA is doing something similar so that we can also ship headless rendering, even on their devices. If you want to just not, if you don't have enough GPU power to at all run a scene on your master node, then headless rendering is actually really cool because you can leverage the fact that, your GPUs are actually the ones over the network. You're not limited anymore to the limitations of the one that's local.
Right.
Tokyo Megaplex asks if you're worried about supporting all these platforms and apps at once. Like, do you plan on cutting support for anything like dying apps, like apps that are kind of on the way out, or
Optimage?
Yeah, I mean, there's some apps that it's like you don't even. I mean, I don't know what the numbers are honestly, but do you look at that and say, there's a certain point? I know you have people that are doing your individual plugins kind of separately. Yeah. Is that something that some of these might eventually kind of go the wayside, or?
Yeah, I did. Well, they have and they will if they're not popular. I mean, it's just that's one of the reasons why we wanted to sort of try, giving people all access, which was an idea of just, bundling all these things together to see just, we do collect statistics on sort of what's used and what's not used just globally. But, even just in terms of the sales, I mean, we know that soft and Mars sales are nothing, right? And we had a motion builder plugin that we were developing. We put it in testing. We took that away just because it wasn't really, lit on fire. So, we definitely are going to support all plugins that have at least, several hundred or thousands of users. That's a reasonable, market size for a plugin. And a lot of them do. People may be surprised how popular some of these plugins are, even if they're not as visible as our bigger ones. So, and they are handled by third-party developers in some cases. So a lot of them, about half our plugins or more, are third-party, developers, and the ones that we handle in-house. Even the ones that are strange, like I think people were looking to skew it at what we were doing with Unity, and now we're doing Unreal. Those are developed in-house. So, we definitely are supporting those going forward in the future. There might be one or two we might trim or cut or essentially deprecate. But the majority of them, I think, are in okay shape. I mean, we're seeing pretty good numbers on almost all of them. I'd say 90% of our plugins are, we could justify sort of continued development. And the ones that don't, I don't think people are going to miss them too much if we deprecate them.
Yeah.
Gav Grant is asking about the VRAM usage on a MacBook, what is that? Mac Pro, I guess, compared to a PC.
Well, it's going to be everything that works in Octane on PC will work the same on Metal. We'll have out-of-core rendering. There's even, I wouldn't call it NVLink, but there is this bridge between the GPUs and the Mac Pro where you can link the VRAM together, at least on pairs of cards.
Right.
Cool.
And each of those, and the VRAM on those cards is pretty high. It's already 32 gigs, which is much higher than most cards, I think, out there today. So you can link, if you link two of those together, you have 64 gigs of interlinked high-speed VRAM, and then you have two of those, so you can essentially double the, double the rendering speed. And then, what impressed me a lot was the fact that you can put a gig and a half of VRAM on that system, and out of core should be pretty fast as well. I mean, we're still early on in testing these things, but I think that from a scene perspective, one of the things that got me excited was that it's rare to have, at least today, 32 gigs in a single card, and then people link two of those together, at high speed is pretty good. I mean, I know that the GV100 has that, the Quadro RTX 8000 has that, but those are very high-end cards. So it's, it'll be cool to see that sort of come to the Mac, and that's kind of a good place for them to start, I think.
Oh, he was asking about the MacBook Pro as well.
MacBook Pro. Yeah, I don't know. Well, if those Radeon cards, I believe on the MacBook Pro, and correct me if I'm wrong because I haven't looked at the shop page well, I think it's 4 gigs of VRAM, which is not very high. So if that's the case, we would obviously be pushing things out of core a lot.
Yeah.
And that's no different than having a 4 gig card on the on the PC, the way it's always been with Octane.
Yeah. Does this affect the way that you do Octane Bench at all?
Well, it hopefully not, because I don't think we're looking at changing much around Octane Bench, at least for the current benchmark scenes. We might be adding some more, but we will definitely be doing an Octane Bench 2020, or we're probably at this point going to update Octane Bench annually as we update Octane itself, and as new hardware comes out. One thing that we will not be testing in Octane Bench specifically on the Mac Pros obviously be RTX on or off, because there's no RTX hardware on those AMD cards.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that you couldn't necessarily hook up an NVIDIA GPU with an eGPU thing, which I know is still kind of a problematic thing on Mojave, but you never know. So I feel like Octane Bench will definitely have at least two other tests that we want to add. One is going to be for equivalent of NVLink or peer-to-peer memory sharing, or out-of-core memory speeds, because that's helpful for people to know. And the other will be what happens when you turn on tensor cores for AI denoising and RTX for rendering and ray tracing. So there'll be sub-benchmarks. And we maybe won't affect the global score, because we still want to keep that kind of the way it is now. And we'll definitely loop in Intel, Apple GPUs, AMD GPUs. They'll all be part of Octane Bench after Octane X is out, and Octane 2020 in 2021 or whatever going forward will have all those other cards on there. And we may also then switch Octane Bench to using the Vulkan backend of NVIDIA to make it really closer to, sort of a fair test of all the different backends that we have.
Cool.
I did want to, real quick, bring up this photo, because we saw this week. And if I could get it to come up. My thing's running a little slow. There we go.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
That's really cool. You got the new sign on the building there. And
yeah, that was just for one night. We had to turn it on, and we had to get approval from the city. We have to get a permit for the logo. So that was to make sure it was okay for me to. Yeah, and it was. I think I was telling you guys earlier the story. I'll share it again, which is that we've been in this building for 10 years. We started with one office, and then we got 2, 4, and then we have the whole floor just for O20. And we have other units in there for other members of our team. And so the building was very nice. Like, you guys have been here for 10 years. I mentioned years ago, like, it would be cool to have the logo on the building. And they said, now's the time, but we need the city to give you permission. So let's, pick what you want. And I just ended up picking white on black because you can see it from pretty far away.
Yeah, it looks great.
It's great. So hopefully we'll get permission to have that thing on there more permanently, and then, it'll be awesome. And it'll also be on the back of the building as well.
That's
Cool.
awesome. That's such a great photo. That's got to be a good feeling standing there and seeing that.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, my girlfriend took that photo behind me, and she shared it with me on like AirDrop. I'm like, oh my God, this is because I was like,
Epic.
we should take good photos of this thing.
Yeah.
And that was, it just sort of came, sort of spontaneously. The night itself was just so surreal. I was like, whoa. Yeah, and because we also drove a bit on the freeway to see how it looked from far away, and it was I could see it from far.
That's
across.
cool.
Great.
Wild. That's super cool.
Wild.
I guess the only other thing that I had on the Octane X notes was the Enterprise Edition. Octane X Enterprise Edition will be offered as a free license to people that are buying a new Mac Pro.
Correct.
Cool.
So we decided to that part of the everything that we sort of put out in terms of our PR and our messaging was something we shared with Apple in advance, and we sort of agreed that if we're all going to sort of commit to this ecosystem, and you guys are helping us with Metal, and they're helping everyone with Metal. We will set aside enterprise licenses for the new Mac Pro. We'll see how that does for a bit of time. And we're going to do it. So we've done free licenses in the past. We did that with Unity. It's still free in Unity with 1 GPU. We're going to do it again with some other plugins like Blender. Unreal will also be free for 1 GPU. And I think that we're curious to see what happens on the Mac when the Mac people get the Mac Pro and they have a free Octane build. What are they going to do with it? And I think that it also helps in terms of just people. I love the Mac and I want to support it. So that was one of my ways of doing that.
That's awesome.
Cool.
Speaking of the free Blender one, we've been hearing about that for a while.
I know.
Is there any update on that?
Yes. And I apologize because it was supposed to come out with Octane 4. The problem is we've been doing Octane 5. It's starting with Octane 2018. We've been on these 4-month release cadences, and we actually came in under the 4 months with 2018. It came out I think a couple of weeks before the 4-month deadline. We're going to be 4 months again I think with 2019.1, and it's a lot of work to even put out a free plugin. I don't think people realize it's not just turning it on, putting it on the shop page. There's support. We have to probably getting a large influx of users. We've learned all these things when we put out free versions in the past with Octane VR and Octane for Unity. So we want to do it right, and we also don't want to truly be supporting multiple versions of Octane. So our commitment for the free plugins is you will get the latest version of Octane. It'll just be on 1 GPU, but it'll have a lot more in it. And Octane 2018 has a lot more than Octane 4. So we basically have the license system in place. I know that people wanted that free plugin sooner, but we really wanted to get it right. And I think putting out something with Octane 4, even in Q1, and then having 2019 come out, it's not what we want to do. We want people to be, if you're going to be using Blender and Octane for free, to learn Octane, do it on the latest version. And I think that's what we wanted to make happen. So that was why the free release didn't come out sooner. We just wanted to make sure that it's on the updated version. And we're this close to 2019. And we should probably also, if you guys are interested, talk about some of the licensing changes, things that we're cleaning up. After
that'd be great.
All the feedback since November, since Black Friday, when I saw you confused, everyone was sort of like, there's a lot of choices. So and the truth of the matter is that actually sales have been good. I don't want to get into the numbers or anything, but it's like we didn't, our sales are better than ever. So for what it's worth, it's good. I think, it may have been confusing, but it didn't stop people from getting the product that they wanted. It didn't get a lot of, it didn't stop a lot of customers from getting Octane, but there are things that we could be doing better. So the feedback that I got from a lot of users is we want to have a subscription option that we can get everything. And, we don't have to buy Octane and right now there isn't
For
that.
sure.
For a brief second, we toyed with the idea of an enterprise subscription, and it was like $50. It was too high. So we're going to have something that's maybe $10 or $12 higher than the current $20 a month subscription. And that'll give you enterprise. We're sort of getting user feedback on that. So there will be, monthly subscriptions that include everything that Octane, the enterprise has. And I think the only exception will be you have to get a year of that if you want offline, because obviously the dongle and all that stuff requires more than just a month commitment.
Yeah.
But otherwise, it should be pretty much equivalent to Octane Enterprise. And people forget that, even if it's like $30 a month or something for that, it'll add up over 2 years. So we make as much money as we would if we'd sold it.
Yeah.
And so we're probably going to keep the existing, for Octane 2019, we'll have the existing $20 a month subscription as it is now with 2 GPUs. But we will have RTX support on there. I think we're going to add NVLink as well to the lower end monthly one, so that you just get everything. And if you want more, that's where the $10 a month or extra $11 a month would come in, and then you get network render up to 40 GPUs. And we also promised a while back to have network slaves that would be about $10 a month, so we'll add that for enterprise, so you can just add those pieces.
Cool.
And we are looking, I'm not sure if it's possible, we're going to try to get all access into the monthly enterprise tier, so that you could just get all the plugins. And I think that's a great deal. I mean, even if it's the $30 range, I think that's going to get a lot of people to get pretty much all you could possibly get with Octane. And the other thing that we got a lot of pushback on was everyone wants a perpetual license, or not everyone, but everyone that owned Octane was wondering where that went, and they want it back. So, if you're already an enterprise subscriber, annual, monthly, whatever it is, or you've already purchased Octane, we will have a one-time option to just get a perpetual license, just like before. But the problem is, the reason we haven't done this is we are updating Octane 3 or 4 times a year now. We wanted to do this perpetual stuff once every year at the most. So we're going to take probably the last version of Octane 2019 this year, offer that as a perpetual license, and then maybe we'll update that later. But at least for those that want it, they have it. The support will be a shorter window than it would have been from the Octane 3 days, where it was 2 years. But I think those pieces will satisfy a lot of customers that want these different options. Some absolutely want perpetual licenses. The other thing we'll do is that I think if you're getting 10 of these licenses or you're even getting 10 subscriptions for a year, we'll offer something like 30% off, which I think is pretty good. So that will make volume discounts much more economical. A lot of users ask us about that, and it's totally something we can do. So a lot of changes on the licensing side, but of course a lot of cool stuff coming in Octane 2019 itself, which is going to be pretty fun to roll out to everyone soon.
When is there a time period in which we should expect,
Yes.
around?
So 2019.1 RC1 is on my laptop. I'm testing it, and once I'm happy with it, which should be hopefully in a couple of days, it'll go out this week. Cool. And once it's RC1, that means it's feature locked. That means we fixed pretty much all the bugs that we're aware of, that users have reported to us in the experimental builds, and that we're maybe there's some performance tuning, but not much. So we're hoping that by that there'll be a few more RC releases, and that by July we'll have 2019.1 stable out the door. The other thing that we're going to be rolling out pretty soon is 2019.2 as a XB release, which has a lot of cool features that we showed in March, but people will get their hands on. So one of those is full RTX hardware support in normal Octane, and of course in the plugins. So it'll be a button that you turn on in the kernel settings, and when you do that, it'll, like as we showed in the benchmark scenes that we posted and that users can sort of test themselves in the preview, the speed is up to 7 times. I mean, a lot of scenes are 3 times faster, and the worst case scenario typically is scenes are 30% faster, which is still really good. And then there are a couple of scenes where it's just really doing nothing with ray tracing, and it's the light bulb from Octane Bench, and then it's 5% faster at the same speed. But either way, it's a nice speed boost, and instancing gets a lot of increased speed from that. And the 2019.2 will also introduce better hair rendering. We showed that at GDC. And random walk, which I think will be really nice. So we're working on wrapping that up. Yeah, and we're also we talk a lot to the Arnold guys, and they're great, and Redshift and everyone that's sort of in our community. So we're adopting the same sort of interface for subsurface scattering and skin and random walk that's in Arnold. I think that's a pretty good way of doing it.
Okay.
So if you're coming from Arnold or using Arnold with Octane, we also have been pretty close. They shared with us a standard surface, the Arnold guys did, and I think that's really, really close. I mean, it's actually just basically a few pin changes from the universal material. So one of the projects that we have is to maybe build a material macro that is just the Arnold standard surface, which would make material packs and things like that are targeting Arnold just work out of the box in Octane, which would be really cool. Yeah.
That'd be super cool.
Yeah, everybody in the chat.
Possible.
Go ahead. Keep going.
Yeah, it's possible with Octane 2019.1 already. You have these material layers, which are really powerful, but we can make it from an interface perspective a little bit more simpler, because there are some things that are flipped, and there's a couple of invert things that we could bake into an Arnold material macro node. And so if you guys are excited about that, let us know. We can prioritize that higher on the release list. It's a couple of weeks of work. It's not a huge amount, but we have a lot on our plate already between Octane X and all the 2019.1 and 2 features that we have to roll out still. And there are some that are kind of they're going to be really great that I can talk to in more detail if you guys are up for that. I don't know how much time we have.
Oh, we got plenty of time.
We got all the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So getting into 2018, I think have we even talked about 2019.1 at all on this show? I feel like
I don't think we have.
I don't think so.
No, this is our first. Yeah, I've got a bunch of.
So we should maybe start with that and talk about some of the features there, just at least at a high level. 2018.1, one of the biggest changes that we made in Octane, and it was sort of a scary change, was we had done a lot of research into much more control of the material system in Octane, like back in the 3.1 days with OSL materials. And the reason why we sort of moved away from that was that even OSL textures, users don't intuitively grok how to use that. So we wanted to make something that was like really simple, that gave you the power of something like OSL materials, and that was layered materials. So essentially now layers are like, in Octane are like Photoshop layers. You can take a sheen layer, a specular layer, and just link, put them one on top of each other. In the standalone interface, it's literally just there's a pin that allows you to connect another material or material layer on top of it, and you don't need to use that. All the old materials are there, but you can use the material layers to actually build your own universal material or the Arnold, standard surface or anything, and it's that powerful. So it's something that allows you to really customize Octane. You can things that have been missing in Octane, like the like rough refractions. You basically can take two specular layers and make one of them rough, and now you have roughness in the refraction system. And those are things that are done in a physically correct way, and we haven't lost any speed in normal Octane. I mean, if you stack tons of layers, it might get slower than having one, but it's still really fast and it works, and that's one of the biggest changes that we added in there. So that flexibility is something that's I've wanted to achieve for years in Octane, and I'm glad it's in this release. The other major feature, I think, is we have vertex displacement in addition to the current texture displacement system. Sweet. And vertex displacement is, it's, there are some limitations, but it's in other renderers as well that use the same system. But in the case of Octane's implementation, you could do some really cool things with it. For one thing, all the scene and texture issues that you had with having to bake textures in, all that stuff is gone. You can put live textures into the vertex displacement system. OSL textures can be put in there. And there's just a lot more control. And you can also support vector displacement maps, mix those with normal height displacement. There's a lot more work to be done. From my perspective, displacement in Octane is an ongoing work. Like, we're going to be working on this well into 2020. We've got even more ideas. But this major rollout is something that I think people have been wanting for a long time. We carefully made sure that everything coming out of ZBrush works great in 2019.1 RC1, which is cool. One of our big asks. And I think the other interesting feature that we added in 2018.1 is you can now feed OSL shaders directly into volumes, and that means that you can do procedural textures and things like that in the absorption and emission channels. And we even showed one test where you can take Vectron OSL. It's a little bit of work. We may have to do a tutorial or a sample, and you can feed that into a volume, and now you have volumetric fractals as well as solid fractals that we had before in 2018. And there's a lot more that we want to be doing with procedural volumes. Being able to do a procedural, sky system or clouds in Octane becomes much more viable with 2018.1. And the other layer that we thought was important to add was more support for OSL. So we're going to be dropping a ton of OSL materials. We thought we were going to bake them into Octane. We decided, no, the better thing is just put them on LiveDB, the existing LiveDB. There's so many of them, and I have to sort of big shout out to the guys at Autodesk building all those amazing OSL shaders going into Max 2020 and Arnold, because those things are awesome, and we've adapted almost all of them, and we'll continue to adapt them to Octane. And sort of we want to get back to the OSL community as well. So we're, anyone that wants to adapt the OSL camera or Vectron, I think you're going to see that stuff come to other renderers. I think in the case of Arnold, they're calling it implicit SDF OSL or something, but it'll be great to be able to have all these things in all these different renderers so that we can all creatively share these pieces. But that's why I've always been a big believer in OSL. And I think it's going to come to almost every render in some form or another pretty soon.
What about
with the updates on the? Hold on, real quick. With the update before I forget, with the updates to the displacement stuff, is there any sort of displacement layering that we're able to do now? Because I know that has been a limitation for a while.
Yeah, so you actually, we have a node called Displacement Mixer, which can take up to 4 displacement inputs.
Yeah.
Each with their
Awesome.
own.
Yeah.
Very awesome.
And so that was, when we were doing the displacement system, we were like, yeah, this needs to be there too. So it's about fixing all those things. And I think, I will say that we're not getting rid of the texture displacement because there are things that it does somewhat better. I mean, in the sense that you don't have to worry about, you now have controls in the vertex displacement to tessellate the mesh, right? And that's important because you have to basically subdivide it to get the displacement to work well. It is also a solution though that works really well with RTX because basically everything that we're doing in the old displacement was this shader trick. It was almost like, it was taking a voxel data set for the mesh, and that's how the displacement worked. It used less memory to some degree in those cases. You wouldn't have to, sort of increase memory for every instance that used displacement, but with vertex displacement you have that, but it also is pretty memory efficient. But yeah, we were also thinking very, very long and hard about making sure that from the artist workflow, being able to blend displacement things together matters. A lot of people ask us for something similar in the material system. Nobody likes mixed materials. I don't particularly like them either. So
it's funny. I got so used to mixed materials.
I know.
The new stuff, I'm like, I'm a little confused.
Yeah.
Everything is there. Nothing has been taken away. And in a sense, you could always have done what we're doing now by linking or chaining like 8 mixed materials, but it was a mess.
Right.
It wasn't clean. So we wanted to have something where you could take. A lot of our 3D Studio Max users came back to us with this. They're like, well, there's a thing in 3D Studio Max where you have these 8, it's sort of a composite node. And so we just built that into Octane 2019. And that way you could just drop in 8 different, any materials you want, have the mask, and that just works. That's in addition to having each of those materials have their own layer system, which is kind of cool. And so there's a lot with materials that you can really go to town with in 2019.1. And I think that, there's nothing that we took away. There's just things that we added, and hopefully, artists that gravitate towards these other, features will still have the old stuff. We think the new stuff might be a bit better for a lot of cases, but it's all still there. And then let's see what else we did. We added a bloom and cut threshold. So in other words, when you're doing post-processing in Octane and you want to basically be able to sort of have just the glare and glint be clamped to a certain highlight level, that's in there. It made a huge difference for me when we were doing post. So if you use post-processing in Octane, that's a great feature. One of the other big pieces that we added in there was the ability for you to have custom camera types. Like the OSL camera was kind of cool and people did stuff with it, but we wanted to build something a little bit more robust that had chromatic aberration and that you could put a texture for example, for Nuke has UV distortion textures. Like we support that in Universal Camera.
That's cool.
In Octane 2018. So it's in the standalone, and what we learned from the Spotlight, which we put in 2018.1, is that it takes a little bit of time for the plugins to actually adapt these they're called script nodes. I mean, they're basically, we use the Octane scripting system with a bit of native code to sort of expand Octane, and that takes a little bit longer for the plugins to add. So I think it'll probably be around July or August before we see the Universal Camera show up in the plugins. But it'll be there, and we're also working on improving it even further. And so that's been something that I think a lot of users really loved in the standalone releases we put out. And yeah, there's more on the list if you guys have any specific questions.
Yeah, along Matt's question with the displacement, actually, the vector or it was like the mixer of the displacement and all that. There was a slide in the deck, and it was talking about triplanar mapping. Is that something that you can just do the regular way, or is it something that has to be done OSL?
No, it should work. I mean, any sort of projections for displacement that work for textures will work for displacement as well.
Okay.
So it's like applying a texture. Literally nothing is missing. All the different projection modes work. Yeah, the old displacement system had to be UVs. This doesn't. You can do any sort of projection you want on any of the displacement layers.
And Tom Glimpse is in the chat. He says he's asking about any news regarding Render, the cloud services, right?
I was going to ask about that.
Yeah,
yes, there's lots. So we're looking, I think we've been targeting June 24th as the day when we're going to switch from doing test tokens to real tokens. So in other words, it's real render tokens being swapped around. The beta is going really well. I think I don't know if the numbers are going out today or in the next couple of days, but we've had about, out of those 14,000 GPUs, about 8% of the nodes that we added in that beta or on that thing are actually up and running, and which is good for small, low beta, and it's been going great. So we're ready to sort of go into the real, on mainnet is what they call it. And that is a huge step for render. I think the next biggest step will be to basically open up the software both for the client in terms of the render nodes, and also start putting render on exchanges so that people can actually collect money for those jobs. But right now, render isn't there. We wanted to really hold that back until the system was really far along, mostly out of beta. And so the 24th is when we're targeting that. Hopefully nothing goes off off track, but it's looking pretty good, and it's both exciting and a little bit scary. On the other hand, I mean, we've been working on this thing for now a couple of years, and the idea for this has been 11 years in the making. So I'm pretty excited about that. And when that happens, there's going to be some other big changes that will happen around the Octane ecosystem as well. Orc will still exist in some form, but it's going to basically be deprecated. There will just be render. And what will happen is that if you want to render your jobs on the public cloud, which is what Orc has been doing for for years now, there'll be tiers of nodes, and you'll be able to go to a node that's operated with MPA certification, and that's something we're working out with the public cloud providers. We'll have probably some more announcements for those in the next few weeks. But the issue with all of those is there's just not enough GPUs. Render will have more GPUs than any other network I've seen out there, and I think we all need that. Like, we just need that, and we also need it to be, more scalable. One of the things that I've asked the team to add is, which I think will help, is priority rendering, because we're still pricing rendering, and the cost is what it is. If you're doing on-demand rendering at the highest possible capacity or speed, turnaround time, but even on Amazon and on Google, you have preemptive, costs, which you can, preemptive instances, or you have spot instances, and those are cheaper, but you have no guarantee of getting those at any reasonable amount of time. In fact, when we are running big jobs, those are completely not available. But on things like PixelPlow and others, you have a priority setting. We want to have that in render as well. So if you are still paying for the amount of Octane Bench hours, which is a unit of work, doesn't matter how many seconds or hours it's actually spread out over, and you don't need your render back the next day, then we'll probably have different priority settings. That's something that a lot of our users have asked for, and we want to provide that meaningfully. It's something that we always wanted to do on Work. It never worked. So we'll see how it all sort of works out. But the interesting thing about render as well is we've had a lot of render farms that don't know how to sort of collect or get business. Like, it's almost like franchising. We can bring them on board render, and we did that a few times during the beta, and it was awesome for both them and us to sort of see their entire network sort of light up. And I think that's a great part about this model, is that it really will bring, and hopefully a really big economy of rendering to a lot of people that have been stuck on cryptocurrency mining. And also, of course, for all of us. I mean, as an Octane user myself, like, I want to have render available because it's great. And Orc has gotten us as much as, it's gotten us sort of part of the way there. We are supporting, as you guys had sort of connected us to PixelPlow, we are supporting Ty. We've been working with him on getting, something that is almost like it's UBL, which is still based on render on the back end, but it allows you to build some different front end, whatever you want. If you want your front end to be PixelPlow or Zinc or whatever it is, Ranch, we can provide that, and there's still the credit system. So it's a lot harder for us to scale that than it is render, where it's all completely, almost bolted on. I mean, anyone can be part of that network. But we do want to support, interesting partners that want to do it a different way, but still use the render network and still, have a token-based system for usage-based licensing. So that's all in play. But yeah, render is going to have a big week ahead of us. So
Dan Marino's asking about what exchanges you're looking at.
The big ones. I don't want to say anything until everything is sort of settled, but ones, not Ether Delta or whatever it is, where people have been trading render for in little quantities for a while. It'll be an exchange I think we're all pretty happy with. The other thing that's related to render that's interesting is, I think on one of our last podcasts we talked about Ethereum network being kind of slow.
Yeah,
still slow. And so we're looking. I promised, I think, that by the end of basically the end of this year, we'd figure out what we wanted to have as far as a possible alternative, and we found a great company called Algorand, and they did a whole blog post about us. They're out of MIT. They've got a pretty fast system, and we really love it. So we're looking at that very seriously for the future of render. But that's something that we'll be discussing a little bit more once we're out of the beta. And I think that there is definitely a solution to getting transaction times to be faster, the volumes to be higher, and transaction velocity is really important. We eventually want people to be able to do all sorts of things on render. So by the time that we're sort of past the main launch and everything's up and running on Ethereum, that's when we'll be looking at doing a possible switch to another blockchain, and Algorand's looking like really a great solution.
Cool.
All right. What I'm excited about is AI super sampling.
Yes. So that is a feature that is in 2019.1 as well. We have been testing how to put that out there, and so we have one simple solution which just allows you to render this the Octane scene at quarter res or 1/16 res, basically, just like subsampling does in the viewport.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of sort of scaling up to the full res once it's done, it keeps it at that res, and then you have, just like AI denoising, you can then upsample that. And that was just sort of a dead simple way of putting it into the 2019.1 release. And it's already in users' hands. People are trying it, and we can always improve it. Like the AI, the other huge feature in 2019 I forgot to talk about is that the volumetric denoiser, the AI denoiser, is way better. We just had a lot more time to train it, and it looks a lot better. It's specifically for volumes, which is some of the stuff that's hardest to denoise correctly. It works a lot better. So the AI upsampler as well, we can keep training it. I mean, if they're, we wanted to put it out there as soon as we could. And so if people are doing stuff in 2019.1 and it's, they're finding it works okay, or could work better, send us your scenes, and we can train the AI upsampler on that. And we'll also be doing that more for the denoiser as well. But it's nice. I mean, it's certainly for giant video walls. Like we're doing another big SIGGRAPH video wall this year. We're going to be using it for that a lot, and that's what it's great for. And I think it's awesome for rendering things at 8K or 16K.
Yeah.
There's a lot of those things out there, and there's a lot of our customers that do location-based entertainment that want to have these giant projected renders, and so having that built into Octane is kind of nice. I think around after the 2018.1 release, we'll look at putting it out there as a post-processing node, so you can just take any image, throw it in there in the node system, and spit out a bunch of upsampled renders as well. And that's, I know people want that, so we're working on that, and it's important for us to sort of get both in there. I think having a sort of a simple one-click, it's upsampled button, for your renders is kind of a good way to start, and then having it also be supported for just any image that you want to throw in there as a through the Octane node system will be sort of a second step in 2018.2 stable. So yeah, fascinating.
I was really surprised. I read an article this week about in movies that are quote unquote in 4K, how much stuff is actually up-resed, and apparently it's a lot. Because just the amount of render time it takes for 4K is so high. There's a lot of scenes in movies. Just a 2-second shot. They're like, we're not going to render this, in 4K because it's just, you multiply that by however many shots you have. It's just, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So,
So, my understanding from Ant-Man and the Wasp, which was a Marvel movie that was done with the opening titles all in Octane, was that the only shot in that movie that was actually rendered in stereo 4K was the title sequence done by Elastic, and the rest of it was all rendered at 2K, and that's kind of interesting. So, I mean, all of our, and also not in stereo. So, it's fascinating to sort of see that. I know Netflix, I believe, asks for things to be rendered natively in 4K for the 4K Netflix experience, and which I think that's not necessarily films and movies. I mean, I was shocked myself, being involved in visual effect shots and seeing how much of it is really done in 2K and then upsampled afterwards. You're right. I mean, it's fascinating. And also, I think it works. It can work really well if you're doing a really nice 2K render. Upsampling that to 4K is going to work pretty well. And I think that for 8K, I mean, you're seeing these Samsung TVs now and others that are coming out.
Yeah.
That are basically AI upsampling built into the hardware, because that's the only way you're going to get something in 8K, short of whatever the NHK broadcast and some YouTube videos that are shot in that.
Yeah.
Bandwidth is still an issue. I mean, it's not perfect for pristine 4K, although it's getting there. I mean, I was looking at my Blu-ray. I bought the Wonder Woman Blu-ray for my for my Xbox, which comes with HD Blu-ray player, and it's like 77 megabits a second, which is pretty high, but it's also not impossible to stream that over over a 100 megabit connection, or 1 gigabit Ethernet, or 5G even. So, the idea of physical media, really being the future, I don't know. I feel like we're almost to the point where Blu-rays are the bandwidth to the Blu-ray drive is not that different from, high-end, home internet. And I think for 8K, of course, you'd be potentially pushing that even higher, but it's also going to be one of those things where I think upsampling will make a lot of existing stuff look pretty good at 8K and even higher resolutions.
That's what you guys were doing at SIGGRAPH, right?
Yep.
With because those looked incredible.
Yeah.
I was watching those. I was like, wow, those must have taken forever to render. Yeah. But if you're just upsampling those, I mean, it looked great. I couldn't tell the difference.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's where the upsampler really shines, is when you're going for super high resolutions. I mean, if you're trying to do a 512 by 512 and upres that to 2K, I don't know. But, I tried it. It's interesting, but I think when you have enough detail in a 2K render and you blow that up to 16K, that's pretty cool, and that is exactly what we were doing. And so we rendered most of our 16K video content at I think it was 4K by 1K, and then just blew that up, and it worked pretty well. So, or maybe it was 4K by 2K. I think it was basically quarter res, width and height, and it looked great. And we couldn't tell the difference when we did one frame at 16K and we compared that to the upres one. It was, you couldn't tell visually.
I also like the idea of using that as a way to spit out fast, like, previs renders and stuff. When you just kind of just start working on a project, sometimes you really want to see the whole thing in motion just to see how it plays out and make sure you got everything right. But you don't want to wait for that, super long, high quality render. That's something I'm looking forward to.
Yep. So you have it's interesting. Like in 2018.1, as I was playing with the RC1 release, you could basically, it renders 4 times faster at quarter res, right? And 16 times faster at, 1/16th resolution. So, you can see how a scene looks with a full, fully sampled scene in a fraction of the time, and that's good. People have been doing that for previews, and so truly you can render, the little tiny preview renders now can be upsampled, and they can look better. But even the AI denoiser, I think, helps with that as well. I mean, certainly for getting, but it's not as robust necessarily as rendering a fully sampled lower res image and boosting that up. But there's still a lot of work we're doing on all the systems. We still want to figure out how to temporally denoise the scenes better. There's also something else that we've been adding in 2018 that I should talk about it. We talked about Spectron as well as Vectron a while back, and Vectron's pretty mature. It's kind of done from my perspective. Spectron is not. It's like that one little spotlight that came out in 2018 was just almost a first step. In 2018.2, we'll be adding true light primitives that are, including area lights and point lights beyond just the spotlight, and they will be sampled much faster. So one thing Octane's never done is allowed anything other than mesh emitter. So these are the very first true primitive types that we'll be adding that have, and you can build other things with them. You can build like different shapes out of the quad light, and it'll still be sampled really fast. But it'll get you much cleaner renders and faster speeds beyond anything we're doing with denoising or RTX. Shading is still really important. So that's exactly why we wanted that in there. And I pushed that feature up. We're also working on pushing up dirt maps and curvature maps. So directional dirt maps is something people asked for a while. I want that in there. And then I think the last 2018.2 render feature that we're trying to squeeze out, once that goes to the XB releases, would be fast fog. Fast volumetric fog as a post effect. A lot of people ask for that. Just like we want to be able to add fog or take it away. It doesn't have to be perfect. But and so we actually have a developer working on that right now, and I think it'll be cool. So we'll sort of have all these pieces together along with random walk and RTX and a lot of cool stuff in 2018.2. And I think .1 is already a fantastic release. So it's going to be exciting to have both of those out there. Kind of at once, really.
With the new geometry and stuff for the lights, will you be able to do like where you drop a piece of geometry into the light to make it emit, something like that?
Well, you could do that already, and that's basically how Octane's always worked, is you have a piece of geometry and it's a mesh emitter, but it's a mesh.
Right.
And the reason why Octane is, it's the unbiased way of doing things. So, the way that I look at biased rendering effects is that it doesn't, as long as it looks unbiased in the end or feels like that, or we have both, adding in features that add some bias but give you faster results is not a problem. I mean, you think about it, AI denoising is a bias thing. It's filling in holes that we don't know what those are, in theory. So having faster, sample lights, I mean, it's stuff that's inside of Arnold and Redshift and V-Ray, and people that have been using bias rendering have had these kinds of light primitives that do this in a very specific way. And when you use in other engines, mesh lights, it's actually a lot noisier and slower. So a lot of what we're doing, again, inspired a lot by Arnold and even Redshift. I think the having light primitives that are sampled faster without compromising quality has been tough, but I think having those in there will be really good. And I think the quality will not look any different than an area light that you put in a mesh. But yeah, it's something that you if you want to have something that's emitting from strands of hair or whatever, these things aren't going to be ideal for that. So that'll be sampled the old way. But if you're just doing area light or spotlight or point light, these will be a lot faster. And I don't know how much faster. We're still testing it out, but it looks, from a perspective of noise cleanup, it looks a lot better. So
I think that's what interests me the most, because I find when I'm working in a scene that I know is going to need a whole bunch of lighting, I tend to gravitate more towards Redshift, but then I take that giant hit of the realism, because I would love to be able to see that speed increase with the lights and be able to create that realism. I know a lot of people have, for as fast as Redshift is, it just can't get you that realistic look that I think Octane does, And I love the idea of having faster, cleaner lights,
Yeah. What's funny is that I love Robin, Panos, and Nicholas, and we've been working together, sort of in the same field for so long. And I remember at the at their presentation at GTC, they were talking about making getting Redshift to be bias speed and unbiased quality. Well, all of us want that too, because basically that quality is really important, and Octane's had that from the beginning, and it's also been insanely fast. And for unbiased rendering, I still think it's nothing can touch it. But one thing that we want to do is we already have things like direct lighting, all these things that we've added in there. I mean, heck, we can talk about this next, which is, we're working on real-time stuff as well, this Brigade kernel. We want to have enough features that add enough bias speed into Octane without compromising unbiased quality. So I think that's the ultimate goal of GPU renderers in general, is to give you the quality that we deliver in Octane, but the speed that you might see if you were to have things like, biased area lights and the like. And that challenge is something that all of us are facing, whether you're coming from the biased rendering world or the unbiased one. We all want to have that. The Corona guys did some really cool stuff with caustics. I mean, they're still a biased renderer, but it's a really clever approach. I love that. And so we're all sort of working towards getting that quality. And I do think that it's tough to get exactly that, the Octane quality that everybody's, been asking for, and to get to the multiples of speed for sampling. And I think we can do that. I think 2019.2 will have, a pretty good shot at getting those things combined together really well. And that's before we add RTX and all these other things that can even make it faster. So I'm pretty confident that we'll have a great release by 2019.2. And to your point, I think we don't want people to have to compromise the speed to get the quality that they want out of Octane. And that's one of the reasons why that feature became a high priority one for us, for 2019. And it's good that it's going in .2.
And you do have in the slide decks, the Brigade RTX kernel, 60 frames a second.
So that is a whole other beast that we had sort of touched on in March, and it's I think we'll have a lot more to show at SIGGRAPH. We wanted to build a specialized. I mean, we'd almost done this when NVIDIA had shared with us the RTX hardware to begin with, much earlier than SIGGRAPH of last year. We felt, we started Brigade as a separate project from Octane to see how far we could get with, getting games in real time to work at Octane quality. And Brigade was never quite at Octane quality. It was close. It was still a path tracer. We blended those together in Octane 4 so that you could at least move objects around in Octane 4, and it was really interactive. I mean, the speed is 60 frames a second. The shading isn't. The shading is still path tracing, direct lighting, as it's always been in Octane. But we did do a lot of R&D in Brigade to get much faster path tracing, much faster ambient occlusion, much faster direct lighting. So we actually have sort of replicated kernels for all three of those, and info passes as well in Brigade, and we're bringing those at some point into a sort of a new kernel type that will be designed for real time. It'll probably not have AOVs, but it'll have it'll still be ray traced, and it'll be a lot less noisier. Currently, the way we've been testing it is that there's a node that we've built into Octane that it's like a render target, but it's a real time render target, and it spits out a different window separately from the your offline render one, and you can move things around much faster. And it's really, really, really cool. You can also use it for offline rendering as well. But I think that from a real-time perspective and from a video game perspective, you want to build something that's running with your Octane material system. If you look at that, there's no noise if you can play back the video in AO, and that's really tough to do in Octane, even with a ton more GPUs. So everything about the way that it samples and renders the scene is much more efficient. There are some trade-offs, like we basically flatten materials down to one universal material layer. We could change that, but we want to at least have a mode where you can hit a button, your scene gets converted and exported on the fly into a format that is really fast to ray trace and path trace, and you have no noise, and you can move things around. And that's going to be important also for the iPad. That's where one of the reasons why I think one of these videos here shows the that very same scene running on the iPad. It also has a lot more bias features. Brigade Kernel does allow you to bake photon maps and all that stuff in there, so you don't have to do GI bounces. You can also cache those and put those back in there. So there's a whole separate rendering system in there that allows you to do these really cool things. And on ARKit and on iOS, you'll obviously have the full version of Octane, all the existing kernels, but you'll also have this mode as well. I think that'll be really useful for AR, and that's all running on an iPad Pro, showing a 13 million triangle scene, and it looks great. It looks really good. So, and of course for AR, we want, you can of course get rid of, layers and drop them in there. And I think that's one of the reasons why we want Octane X, is that we want people to have a whole toolkit on the iPad or even on their iPhones that allows you to, create and edit and make scenes all on the device, with videos that you're shooting either live or that are pre-recorded. So ARKit 3 adds the ability to record all the position and planes in the video and store that. So you can then load those back into Octane X, let's say, and then have and then drop in an Orbex file from there and just, or multiple Orbexes, and then make a scene that is all done on the iPad. And I think that's one of the goals we want to achieve. So Brigade Kernel is something that's probably going to come almost separately. It'll be a module for Octane. That's at least the way it's developed now. So it could drop in at any time. I think we'll have a preview of that for people to play with at SIGGRAPH, and maybe if it's far enough along, we can even let people try it out. And that also, by the way, worked entirely. That kernel's written in the new system, so it runs already on Metal, Vulkan, iPad, and everything. It's probably one of the first pieces of rendering tech that we can ship, short of the full Octane, that you can try on Mac and AMD hardware. So it's exciting stuff.
And someone in the chat's asking about Android as well.
Yes. So the Brigade kernel in the runtime form is something we could run on Vulkan, and Vulkan is on Android, so it is definitely possible. There just isn't quite. I mean, I'll be honest. No one's asked yet about AMD and Intel on Windows or Linux, which is a possibility, right? Because we basically do have a Vulkan version of Octane that we're comfortable at this point saying that we could ship on NVIDIA, because NVIDIA's given us all the things on the driver side that we've also asked for from Apple, and so we can ship code correctly and in a stable way. We don't have that on Intel and AMD just yet, and we definitely don't have that from like Samsung on Vulkan. But if we did, then yes, that Brigade kernel would be something we'd want to ship, especially for users that are developing in game mode in Unity or Unreal that want to have that real-time path trace Brigade kernel. I think that's the kernel you'd want to use for real time. You don't want to run PMC or whatever on your for your game. But the Brigade kernel on Android is an important thing for us. So I think once we're a little bit further along, I mean, we really want to make sure we can at least ship NVIDIA, Vulkan, get everything in place, and then we can look at all the other vendors, including Intel, AMD, the mobile vendors like Qualcomm, Samsung, and others. I think even Magic Leap 1, I think has. I mean, they used to have CUDA on there because it's an NVIDIA chip, but they have Vulkan support, and so you can imagine like an Orbex media player or something that allows you to ship your Unity or Unreal games that are built with the Octane plugin to basically just run in game mode with that kernel, and we want that on all devices. It'll definitely work great on iOS and on Metal, and on those devices probably I don't see us bringing full Octane. The full authoring Octane to tablets other than the iPad, but the real-time pieces, maybe those will be out there on all devices. Yeah,
I think someone earlier was asking about Unreal.
Yes,
and Unity.
We might expect, because it's out for Unity. It's been for a while, but
yeah. So I can speak to that. It's one of those things where it's on my laptop and it's working great, and I'm pretty happy with it. So we've had a very closed beta for a while, since last year. Mm-hmm. It's definitely ready to go. I mean, it's in great shape, and it even has a couple of things that we've added that I've never seen quite implemented in our other plugins before. So you can, for example, like, just go through all the different render targets relative to standalone, and it's really nicely integrated. And I feel like we could have released it in March. I just wanted to get a few more pieces in there. One of those pieces was getting it to work with Unreal Engine 4.2.2, which we solved. And I feel like that also is going to go out around the time that Octane 2019.1 hits, maybe this week or at the latest next week. I keep saying that, but it also has been one of these things where we're perfectionists. We also are, looking to get it out there in the right way. So it's the most useful piece, but it's really far along. I mean, it's definitely at this point more than a early beta. It's a very late beta, I'd say.
Cool.
And it should be out in people's hands really soon.
So a lot of people in the chat room are calling you Tony Stark. And
for the logo.
And I think they're the amount of stuff you work on and just how incredibly futuristic it is as well. Like the question that everybody was asking is like, have you hung out with Elon Musk, first of all? And
several times.
Really?
Several times. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'll talk about the very first time that happened. So I don't know if you guys are familiar. I work with actually one of my on the board of advisors of our company, of R. Emanuel, who runs Endeavor. He introduced me to Elon. He introduced me to a lot of people. Last time I know J.J. Abrams, who's also on our board of advisors now. And I met Elon, I think for the first time in 2008. And I met him after my mom drove me. This is when I was living in my mom's house, and I didn't have a car, and she drove me to SpaceX. And at that time I was working on game streaming, and he was very nice. I met him many times after, and he's been really, really, really gracious. I think in 2013 I met him again when I was doing some sort of X Prize thing with a couple of friends, and I told him, "Are you really going to Mars?" He's like, "Yep," and I couldn't believe it. It was one of the things where it was before it was really well known that was his plan. But I remember the 2008 meeting. I was telling him about game streaming, and he said, "Well, I need to ask my good friend John Carmack about whether this is what you're doing." So he did, and years later, when I was talking to Carmack, and we got Carmack and I got to be friends because Elon connected us through email. Carmack said, "Well, I think I remember at the time Elon calling me and telling him that I could do it in the weekend, but I didn't know what Otoy was doing, so hope it didn't mess anything up." Like, no, it's fine. And it's great. I mean, he's incredible. I mean, he's changing the world. I think he's one of the most incredible people on the planet, and I'm in awe of the stuff that he does. And I think he's better than Tony Stark. I don't think Tony Stark, Iron Man, ever did anything where brought out electric cars. I think the only superhero responsible for that was Dr. Manhattan and Watchmen, when they were like, I can synthesize lithium, so electric cars are now happening in the 80s. But there's stuff like that he's doing that's world changing. And I'm a huge Iron Man fan. I mean, I really love the character. He's just like Batman. He just creates himself, self-made. Even the superhero powers are all just out of his mind. And so kind of why I've always liked Iron Man and Stark is that it just shows that anybody that puts their mind to it can be a superhero, and that's awesome.
So Elon is probably I could imagine him having one of the first like full-size holodecks, with this new technology.
The last time I talked about holographic stuff, I think was in 2012, and I told him that like we were working on it. He asked me like, is it like 2 packs? Like, no, this is like true light field holographic panels. Like, well, when it's ready, let me know. I'd love to see it. And so I think we're at the point now where like I actually should shoot him an email and say, hey, this Light Field Labs display thing is it's real. That's a thing. And it is one of the most exciting things that I have ever been connected to. So I don't know if we talked about it a little bit last time.
No, we haven't gone into detail. I'm like super excited to hear more about this. Actually, I got a ton of questions for you.
So I think part of why I wanted Render to exist is that one of the ways that we approach rendering on these holographic panels, because they're really high resolution. They're not fundamentally like magically different than a normal panel. They are just super high res. So if your iPhone is 400 DPI, these are 4,000. So you have 100 times the subpixels for every pixel on already a Retina display. And what that means is that those subpixels can shoot rays out in different directions, and you have, at that point, with trillions of rays possibly shooting out from a TV-sized version of these panels or a table-sized version, it looks like a white light hologram. And that's basically what the holodeck was. The holodeck was, other than the touching part, it really was just these six, it's a cube that you walked into, and holographic images were projected from there. So Light Field Labs, the display that they're building is, I think, 18 inches by 18 inches. It's like the Samsung LED, micro LED video wall, where you can connect those together and create any size surface you want. And they can also be curved. They can also be on the floor or the ceiling. So you actually, probably the cost of many, many, many millions of dollars, build an entire holodeck now with these panels as they exist. But they are 6 by 4 inches. So the videos that are, sort of you guys are showing, those are things that we've been using to sort of test the content. So some of the stuff that we've been building with the Brigade kernel was so that we could drive, 32 by 32K displays at 60 hertz from 2 GPUs. And that is something that is fascinating. So I don't know if I've seen these at the same time everyone else is, but there's a little mini metaverse room that was one of the scenes that was rendered for one of the Oculus contests in Octane.
Yeah.
And that scene, I've seen that very same scene, that image basically, or that render projected on the actual 6 by 4 inch holographic display at Lightfield Lab. And the wood panels, that's a 6 by 4 inch one with the it's just that one little panel with the seahorse on there. That 6 by 4 inch one is able to project images in and out by a couple of inches. The larger the panel size, the further out you can project things. But even at a couple of inches, that door and that coat hanger from that mini metaverse room was just floating in front of that surface, and it was insane. I mean, it's like nothing I've seen before. It's not, tracking your head with glasses, which we've done. We've done that with to test stuff, and we'll probably bring that back to SIGGRAPH again so people can see it. But Lightfield Lab does have, and it's by appointment only, but you can come up and see this stuff, and everyone that's seen it has been insanely impressed. And the 6 by 4 inch panel now has a second one that you can sort of put behind that to get greater depth. So you can also increase the depth of the of what you can do per surface area, or you can have greater surface area as well. And my guess is that these panels in quantities, at least for large format, sort of location-based entertainment and large displays, might be as early as next year. And I certainly think in the years to come, you'll start to see those become cheaper and cheaper until they become, every single panel is holographic. I think their business model is to license this out to anyone that wants to build displays. So it's not just going to be their displays only. And that means that it could be everywhere and anywhere, including, phones and tablets and TVs.
Yeah, so the more of these panels that you add, the more depth you get. So if you did an entire room and a floor and everything, you're going to be in the holodeck. And
correct.
And you mentioned something in this talk, in this video we were showing here about what it looks like in real life, because everybody wants to know, does it look kind of fake? Is it kind of like transparent? You
one
said
thing,
something
one
about
thing that I
magnifying...
initially think that when I'm okay, so this was a big thing when 3D movies came out. You've got to wear these glasses, and then the stereographer decides what you're going to focus on, because that will be the thing in focus and everything else will be out of focus. See, me as like a person who enjoys movies, I like seeing the overall aesthetic, and when I was focusing on something that was out of focus or blurry, it would make my brain hurt. You know, and so what comes to mind with this is I would think that everything in this would need to be in focus, and it might kind of throw you out. Yeah.
It definitely would, and it would. Well, here's the thing: it is in focus. It's in a strange way. It's like looking at a play or a theater or a concert, right, where the things are really there. And so that, and I think that you'll eliminate one of the biggest problems with 3D glasses, or even 3D in general, which is that you're basically frame locked, even if you move your head and even if things have depth to them. And in this case, these are real, and that doesn't mean you can't create weird, interesting effects. Like, we're starting to play with that. Like, what if you were to still have things in focus but still keep things blurred? I mean, there are things that you could try and do creatively that. Until people actually had cameras and started playing with things and created the first movies, right? I mean, nobody imagined the things you could do artistically with them until people tried them, and content creators had the tools to start experimenting with this. And it's been that way with VR as well. You've seen some really cool stuff happen in VR, especially on the PC side, where there's a little more rendering power with, and I love that. I mean, I love seeing sort of the exploration of that, but it's still the problem with VR and even AR is that it's a small market for the glasses. And I'm hoping that when you have when people just swap out their, because you'll get to 8K TVs at the end of this decade as well, and you already have HDR and all that's great, but really light-field-based holographic displays are the next thing. And you can of course display any 3D movie on them, any 2D movie on them, but the holographic versions of these are the ones that are rendered at the trillions of they're terapixels basically, and streaming that's hard. So we actually partnered with Cable Labs. I think Charter and Cox and other cable companies are sort of working with us to define Orbex, the actual export format from Octane, as the mezzanine format for holographic display panels. So Lightfield Labs ourselves were part of that, and we announced that at NAB. That was why actually I was there. And so they're going to have 10 gigabit Ethernet, or 10 gigabit fiber, to the home. And for cable companies in the future, looking at all these converging things happening, that's where 10 gigabits might actually be useful to be able to stream these sort of holographic experiences live. We definitely saturate that bandwidth. But yeah, the modality of not having to wear glasses. I mean, even for AR and VR, I feel like you will, if your table or your walls, your windows, even which you can replace windows with these holographic panels, are just completely digital. Wearing glasses is not going to be required. And even if you go outside, imagine in 30, 40 years, if every single building has holographic panels, and because it's as cheap as wallpaper surrounding the buildings. The buildings could turn invisible. They could be anything. Cities may look different. Clothing might have it at some point. It's wild. I mean, it's pretty cool. And so the next two stages beyond the visual display panels that Life Lab is building are to add touch, which will be through ultrasonic, so you'll have some basic haptics. It'll be pretty good.
Yeah, I was interested about that. Like, how does that even work? Is it
wearing gloves?
No gloves. No gloves. The whole point, everything that they're doing is there's no device other than you and its screen, and so it works. And people have shown, in labs how this works. It's not like completely new. They're just building it into the device. Basically the way the holographic panels work is that you're already beamforming light. You're taking photons and you're beaming them out in the right way. So if you do that with sound, you can create a solid sort of force of sound at a certain point in space, and that is how you could then configure. And it won't be like super high resolution touch, because our sense of touch is, I think, goes down to nanometers. I think if you on the fingertips, but it'll feel like maybe the same as one of those pin art kind of things. That's still pretty good, and it might be better than that. We'll see. I mean, it's something that it's very much on their roadmap. And then the other piece that they're working on, and we want to sort of help contribute if we can, is to put the things like light stage, which captures all the different possible lighting conditions inside one of the back of these holographic panels, especially if they're large, so that you can actually have sort of two-way magic mirror holographic calls or meetings with people. And that's important too. I mean, it's not just about taking you there and putting you in VR. It's about the social interactions that you could have with people and collaborations and the like. And my gut is the first holographic panels that people will really, as content creators, Octane users, for example, might really benefit from, is a table where everything on the table is pushed up. And that is, I think, more interesting than people might realize, because anything on that table, including my MacBook, my iPad, anything can sort of be brought up, and you can do a lot with that. And that's something also that you can have, exactly.
Yeah.
And everything else that's larger than that, I think in some ways, it's amazing from an experiential perspective, and maybe even from a social perspective if you want to see everything life size. But when you're working and creating, I think holographic table is going to be a really compelling device, and might replace the desktop systems that we have now as we know it. So I'm excited for that.
Man, I'm so excited about all of this. I want to see a demo of that. Like, where are they located?
Yeah.
So they're located in Santa Clara, and you can just go to their Twitter, or I can, we can share their email address, I think, in the at the end of the podcast. But you can set up an appointment. Typically, the appointments are for partners and some press, I guess. I think Ian Hamilton, who writes for Upload VR, was there with me, actually. I actually joined him for that because I wanted to see what his reaction was, and he loved it. But yeah, it's by appointment only. I would love at some point, and I'm sure there's going to be a trade show where they bring it, and hopefully, the partnership we have with them is all of our content, even Octane users' content, will just be shown on there. Right now I'm in the middle of taking that, I don't know if you guys saw, there's a short from Big Lazy Robot. They did Keloid. They did sort of a full test of Octane 2019 for 3D Studio Max with a 3-minute short, and we're taking pieces of that short and trying them on the Lighfield Labs display, so to make sure that, or even just get a sense from ourselves, like how content might look on that. And so I'm hoping that maybe next year at trade shows it'll be out there, and if not, anyone that's super interested, we can maybe help facilitate a trip up there and see what people think of it. But it's pretty great.
Yes, that would be awesome. Oh man, so much cool stuff coming down the pipeline. Is there anything we didn't cover? I tried to get to all the questions. There were so many of them there. I don't know. If anybody else has any questions, put it in now.
I want to say we covered a lot.
We covered a lot.
What's even beyond? What's your ultimate goal?
Yeah.
What's the ultimate goal?
I mean, I think that I wrote a blog post called Photon Driven Economy, which talks about what I want to see from Render and all the other things we're doing. I would love everyone. I mean, that's the ultimate goal is for whatever part O2 has to play in, or even if it's not O2, I just want to see a world where, as creators, we can think of something and it's made real and we can share it with the rest of the world and it feels real to them. I mean, that's ultimately one of the things that inspired me to build the company. it wasn't just about games or movies. It was kind of both. And I think a lot of interesting, fun games or sandbox games where there's a lot more of yourself sort of playing and creating and participating in that. And I feel like that's where I want to see the future of art and content creation going. So if Otoy can help make that happen, that would be fantastic. And I think that there's also a huge potential for the creative spirit of artists and people to sort of drive the economy in the future. I mean, even if robots take over a lot of more mundane jobs, I'm also hoping that that Elon figures out how to get unlimited free power, unlimited free internet, printing that can be powered by the unlimited free power that creates food and medicine, and that just allows us to focus on creating stories and mythologies and exploring the human spirit. And that's a lot more like the Star Trek vision that Roddenberry had. And as I discussed before, I think my best friend and investor in Otoy was Gene Roddenberry's son. So I sort of had Star Trek in my early childhood, living, going to school with him and seeing, just all of this sort of unfurl. And the next generation for me is just, it's this beautiful vision of how the future can be. And so I want to see that happen. Picard was using iPads in the 90s. That became a real thing 10 years later, not 300 years later. My friend Rod Roddenberry did sponsor the Tricorder X Prize, which actually is happening. And then, the holodecks, another big one that I want to see work out. And I think those things are all about bettering humanity and giving us all, really a more interesting set of opportunities and freedom to contribute creatively to life.
Yeah. You excited about the new Picard show?
I'm very excited about it.
Me too.
I don't know what I know or don't know. I will say that I was asking Rod about it, and I was like, dude, is it really happening? He's like, yeah. I was like, oh my God. It's like, it's not, and it is. I mean, they're doing, he's a producer on that show as well as Discovery. It's really cool. And by the way, one of the actors on the Next Generation, Gates McFadden, I just saw her recently, and she's, I mean, it's like I love the Next Generation, so I'm excited to see them revisit that universe, and it's going to be cool.
A couple other questions in the chat here. Any plan on updating the manuals? I think some of them. I know the Cinema 4D one is updated. I'm not sure about the other ones. But
we hired a new manual guy, so he's working on with Abby in our office. And you guys may know Abby on updating all the manuals. But the Cinema 4D manual is actually handled by Ahmed, and he brought in other people to help him with that as well. So there's the C48 manual I think is pretty up to date and comprehensive, and we're doing the same for standalone and the other plugins as well. And we actually just brought in a person I think a week or two ago to help with that process. The website we're also going to be updating as well with 2019. I mean, I know it's sort of long in the tooth, so there's certainly the shop page. And I think there was something else I remember somebody wanted to ask about on Twitter, but I forgot. It was maybe related to 2019, but I think we covered that pretty well.
Yeah, I had that tweet. I think we've covered just about everything in there. Somebody was asking, how do I invest in Otoy? That's
by render, I guess. I mean, that's not really the right answer, but it's basically, I mean, buy Octane. I mean, it's one way to help the company if you want to. I mean, as part of, I guess, the closest we ever came to having people be able to buy shares of the company was really the, was really our efforts to sort of provide an economy around render, but it's really actually render's handled with a whole separate company. I mean, just to keep it, really, in its own sort of ecosystem. But I think that render is a reflection of all the things that we're doing. It's really my vision. So, it's not meant to be speculative though. I mean, it's like we want to keep those render tokens really at that price so that you can use them and consistently have those things out there. And you also see some others, cryptocurrency news this week, I think, from Facebook. They're launching LibraCoin, which is going to be their tool for payments. I think that's tomorrow. But we're so excited with render, and I feel like Otoy itself is on a really fascinating trajectory for the next couple of years.
Great, man. Well, we appreciate you being on. Like, I'm so excited about this, and I can't wait to hang out at SIGGRAPH and see some of this.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's gonna be a lot of fun. We'll go party it up and whatnot. It's not as crazy as NAB, at least, right?
No, it's not.
But that's going to be a lot of fun. That's coming up quick. We're a little over
end
a
of
month.
July.
Yeah,
like a month and a half.
Oh, man, we got a lot of work to do between now and then.
So do we. We have an interesting booth this year. It's very long, so we're figuring out how to use that space wisely. But it'll be fun. It'll be a great booth.
Is it the same?
Last year's booth was amazing.
Yeah,
Thank you.
So yeah.
Yeah, and this year we're right. I mean, it's a great area. Like we have, I think the Unity booth is right next to us. I think Maxon's right in front of us,
Cool.
and it's a great area. So I'm sure I'll see a lot of people there from the Octane community. And as always, I love being on this your guys' Slack channel. And on
Yeah,
Facebook.
we love having you on there.
Yeah.
It's
Great.
really nice. Like, people are throwing out questions about it, and you're just like right there answering it. It's really great to see.
Yeah. Yeah, the direct
great.
line. All right, well, we appreciate you being on. We'll see you next month, and we're going to go talk about some other random internet things and graphics things, and we will be talking to you soon.
All right, great. Thank you guys so much.
Thank
It's
you.
always a pleasure.
Take care. Night.
Bye.
All right. I'm going to switch us over here to our other thing. Matt, if you want to, I'm going to hang up with you real quick, and call back, and then we'll get to go. All right.
Okay.
Stand by, everybody. It's just us now.
Hello.
All right. Let's continue
Still
on.
streaming?
Yeah, we are still streaming. All right, let's
Oh, how'd you do that?
Ooh, it's magic. All right, so let's move on. I have some links that I want to do real quick, and then I want to get into the show topic, and then we're going to be out of here.
I mean, we don't really need to go to the show topic,
Oh, it's
do
a
we?
good show topic. I've got it
All right.
totally prepared. I did copious notes. I did like 2 pages of notes on this yesterday. First of all, let's go to links real quick. Octane Texture Pack number 3 from Pixel Lab is out. I'm going to put a link to that in the show notes, as well as links to everything else, the videos and everything else in here. Fume Effects 5.0 for Cinema 4D.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah, Fume Effects has been big in I believe the 3DS Max, right?
Yeah, the thing is, well, we both got the beta in our inbox this morning. We requested the beta, and so we don't really have any more info yet until we mess with it. But like, I'm really excited about that, to check that out. Also, there's a caustics generator that I found somewhere the other day, which I thought was really cool. If you're trying to generate like fake caustics, like if you wanted, like, you can do all the settings and get it all set and do it as a texture to kind of like fake caustics if you're working on something that you don't want to be too heavy.
Neat.
And the other link, something you mentioned to me the other
day. Would it be possible in like an OSL shader or something like that?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a little spendy. I want to say it was $180.
Ooh.
I would be a little more interested at like 50 price point, but if you need this for something really important, or you're working with a client, they can totally cover that cost. It's like,
I was about to say, I'm sure Tokyo Megaplex wants to know what that is. Where's the caustic generator?
The caustics generator. I'll have, I'm going to put a link in the Slack channel right now under the, I don't know, I'm just going to put it in general, and people can check that out. But the other thing that I found was, this is something you brought up.
It is?
It's Wave Apps was purchased by H&R Block. So we're waiting to find out what's going on with that. They're saying that everything's going to stay the same.
Our favorite invoicing service, our favorite free invoicing service.
Yeah.
It worries me because, if you've got a company like Wave Apps, we've been using them for years, and I'm sure their competitor is going to be QuickBooks, and QuickBooks has the online paid version. I'm worried that they're going to start going to paid.
We'll see. We'll see. We don't know yet.
We were trying to get them as a sponsor for Camp Mograph, but they're, then it
I
all.
think this is probably
they
why.
seemed really big into the idea, but they were changing over some stuff in their offices, and it was like, okay, well that makes sense.
Yeah. So
can't get my stupid hat to look straight.
All right. Well, I wanted to do one topic here for a little bit, and then we'll do people's people and get out. Now, we're going to switch a little bit from the technical to the personal side of this, because we like to cover all of this stuff on the show. The nerdy stuff, the personal stuff. Like your
nerdy.
Yeah. And so
the clap, that was golden.
Yeah. Thanks.
It was so good.
Yeah. Yeah. That was it matched up kind of with the beat, and I was like, oh, I got to add a clap in here. I gotta add a clap. I added the clap sound effects, like sweetened it a little bit and everything. Okay, but this is kind of a precursor, just a little bit precursor to what we're going to talk about with Casey Hupke in 2 weeks. 2 weeks from today, I think. We're going to do.
Who's next week?
Next week is Chris Schmidt.
Oh yeah, that'll be fun.
That's going to be fun. So this is like a precursor because we want to talk about some mental health stuff and all of that. Casey has a lot to talk about when it has to do with your personal life and everything else.
Yeah.
Like, Father's Day was yesterday. I've been doing a lot of thinking. I don't know, as a dad, things like that.
Yeah.
Thinking about mental health and your time and work-life balance and all that stuff. And sometimes there's like it's almost like there's too much going on. Like it's going so fast. You're just like, I want to pump the brakes a little bit and just slow this down. I feel like so much.
What happened to my
on.
little kid? My little baby.
Right. Yeah.
Now he's just a big kid now.
That's what I'm saying. And it's like, how much of that time was I in front of Cinema 4D?
Right.
I mean, it's necessary. You got to pay the bills, though. And so
Right.
it's like, well, how do you balance this out? And we're going to talk about more about that when Casey is on. But I talked a while ago about the onstage and the backstage persona. What you put out there in public as opposed to what's going on in the background.
Sure, of course.
Everybody goes through these different things. Like, it's like the internet meme, what people think that you do versus what I actually do.
Right, right.
Because like there's so much you do in your day to day and you're frustrated and you're dealing with things and you're doing emails and all that. And then you produce like maybe one piece of content and everybody's like, well, how did you have the time to do all of that stuff? It's like, that's everybody's question. But the answer that everybody will give you is like, well, I really don't. I'm just like trying to make all of this stuff work. And, sometimes it's hard to deal with because you see other people being quote unquote successful on the internet. And you might almost get this pressure that you have to spit out constant, content. You got to constantly be delivering, and you can almost lose your creativity when you're doing that.
You get burned out pretty quick.
Yeah. Creativity is like a fart. And if you have to force it, there's going to be shit. And everyone's...
Did you write that yourself?
I did write that myself.
That's funny.
Everyone's dealing with a lot of stress.
That needs to be a t-shirt.
Everyone's dealing with a lot of stress. You got people working for big companies. You've got people, trying to do the contract thing, trying to do their own thing, maybe trying to start their own small business, stuff like that. And you're trying to build something. You're trying to work on projects at the same time, and you're trying to make sure you got money in the bank while you're doing that. Sure. You're trying to put food on the table. There are
put your family
food on your family.
Food on
you're
your
working
family.
hard to put food on your family. and there's a stress that comes to it. You're thinking about things like, how in the world am I ever going to be able to retire? Like, how am I ever going to make this work? Like, seems like there's not going to be an end. My Todoist inbox thing, is
just keeps getting bigger.
It just keeps going. I finally feel like I put a little bit of a dent in it in the last couple months of all the stuff that I had to do. And there's lots of anxiety. There's even depression. There's stuff that comes along with that. And so I lost my notes. Okay, so then you mix in Tokyo Megaplex says,
I know, right?
Talking about holograph and ray tracing, and then getting the farts. You got to get the fart jokes in, But there's you mix all the problems that you're dealing with, and then you add in family and kids or marriage and girlfriends. All of those things. These are all things that I know a bunch of our listeners go through. The day to day and the work-life balance and dealing with never having enough time for that work-life balance. When you have a new kid and you're trying to I know a lot of people as designers, they're stay-at-home dads, basically, because
or moms.
They're working, they're taking care of their kid. They're in some cases, the wife is the main breadwinner. And, or the husband, and then the significant other is the the artist, contractor trying to start something, trying to get things going, and maybe not making that much money, and the wife is kind of making things stay together, or the husband making things stay together while that person is home. And a lot of people watch their kid at home while trying to do motion graphics. I know I did that. That was not easy. So you're kind of dealing with all of that. It's rough, you know, so it's important that you have a significant other that's very supportive of what you're trying to do. I hear rumors all the time of, oh, this Mographer or this person or whatever, you know, went through a divorce or went through this thing, you know, and I'm finally in a place where I can mention it, you know, like I don't talk about my personal life on the show that much anymore because over the last 2 years I was going through a divorce. And so, you know, there really needs to be a study on Mograph marriages. You know, I think
I think the divorce rate for this industry is very high.
Yeah.
I think that's why most so I think that's why most Mographers are married to teachers, because they can deal with, you know, our scatterbrainness and our
dealing with children. No, that's understandable.
Yeah, they're dealing with children. That's what it is.
No, you know, all the things we talked about, right? Like dealing with that stuff, anxiety, depression, all of that. It's like every icon, every Twitter person that you see online, you know, probably has something going on like that. Whatever little avatar, there's so much behind that avatar, who that person is, the everyday struggles and things like that. And everyone's worried, am I doing this right? You know, am I good enough? Is anyone noticing what I'm posting? You know, what about that thing I said to the client the other day? You know, maybe this project didn't go well. What about all my unanswered emails that I just can't seem to keep up with? The things that you've screwed up before. Am I, you know, like I said, am I doing this right? Nobody really knows. Are we doing this right? I don't know. Nobody has the real answer.
I didn't know for the first like 6 or 7 years. Yeah.
Right. I still don't know.
I think with that, you know, you're talking about the outward
persona
that you're showing. Yeah. Your outward persona or whatever. And do most of these people, you know, experience the same stuff? Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's interesting running this show and having so many guests on the show. We've had a ton of big name people on this show, and it's like, once you meet them and you kind of talk to them a little bit, you're like, oh, okay, you're the same, you know, you're a person too, you know, like you're a person who creates good work, but you struggle just the same as we do.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And so like, yeah, it's one of my favorite stories is when I first met Paul Babb and Andrew Kramer, and you know, so I heard they were at the pinball party, and I was like, okay, I want to go meet Andrew Kramer, right? I've told this story a bunch of times, you know, and I walk outside, and there is Andrew Kramer talking to Nick Campbell and Paul Babb, and I was like, well, no, that's a little too intense of a situation. I'm gonna just go back up. You know, I told Paul that, and he's like, no, we're all the same. We all shit the same. You know, it's no big deal. You know.
And everybody has those things going on. You know, they do their day job and they create whatever they create and they put it out there, and then they go home and deal with personal things.
Yeah. And you know, if also a lot of us worry that we're not necessarily good enough or we're not producing good work. And the thing is, it doesn't really matter. Every single one of us at a certain point in our life was not producing good work. I mean, look at the first like 10 years of my career. I was not producing good work. I'm now just to the point where I'm halfway decent, you know?
Right.
Like I can at least BS my way through work now. You know?
I think I've got a curve too where I'll never hit the place where I want to be because it's that exponential whatever. You never hit as close as you come, you'll never get where you want to go type thing. But you know, the thing is that despite all the long hours and all the things happening, you know, you go home and then, you know, there's like some tweet from some D-bag who doesn't like your opinion on Fong angles, you know, or something like that. And then that's the only thing that you think of the rest of the day.
Yep.
You know,
there was an interesting tweet or meme or something that I saw. Sorry, look at the
chat.
from Liam. He said, from Penny, Paul Babb puts his C40 on one leg at a time, just like the rest of us. Sorry. I forgot where it was going. Oh, it was a tweet or a meme or something. And now I forgot what it was.
No, you'll have to find it. But the thing is, like, that person, like, that person on the other end doesn't know what your day was like or what was going on. And you know what? They're not going to think about what they said the rest of the day, but you are.
I remember it now. It said, are you having a bad day, or what did something that happened to you for 10 seconds out of your day, cause the rest of that bad day?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Or are you dwelling on that 10 seconds,
Yeah. 5 minutes later, that jabroni doesn't remember you, and the rest of the day sucks for you. It's hard to let that stuff go. And if someone's wrong on the internet, I like to tell them. It's hard not to.
I know you do.
It's hard not to.
You should not.
I don't, unless I'm on Facebook. That's a different story. And it's like, what is the solution? Because this is a chapter. It's not the whole story. You're going to get to the end and realize what you got through. We personally don't have all the solutions. I know we can talk a little bit about the work anxiety. The personal stuff is harder for me. I think Casey comes on. He'll talk about that a little bit. But, again, like, I'm always thinking of the Beeple render. I've got the wrong screen. There you go. Take Jules out of there. F checking Facebook again. F the pic you saw on Instagram. F worrying about how many people liked your last post. F the news, the person you really should email back, your self-doubt, whatever happened yesterday, starting tomorrow. F, will people like this? F, will I be good enough? F, all of your excuses, sit the F down and do your work. And sometimes I really, really have to force myself. It's so simple, right? It's so simple. But sometimes you just have to remind yourself of that, and it's just... It's tough, but thanks, people. That's a good start.
Requested a connection on LinkedIn today, and I just kind of laughed to myself. He connected with me on LinkedIn. I was like, that's funny.
Well, Casey's going to be on the show. We're going to talk about this some more. It's just kind of he's going to give a little preview of what we're going to do at Camp Mograph. We're not going to give it all away, though. So you got to come. If you're on the fence about going to Camp Mograph, I would encourage you to listen to that show in 2 weeks and really consider it after we talk to Casey. We'll get more into that mental health, the work-life balance. Not so much into the fitness. We can talk about fitness, but we can't do it on the show. You got to do that at Camp Mograph in the mornings.
Camp Mograph.
Work off that hangover.
Yes.
Yeah, we can't do those activities on the podcast, but whatever. So, Anywho, come to Camp Mograph.
Come to Camp Mograph.
Hey, just to put
we're on the subject of Camp Mograph, I just want to give a huge shout out to all of our sponsors for Camp Mograph.
Yes.
Because really, without them, like, this could not have happened, and we could not have kept the prices so affordable.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So of course, Maxon and Octane Render, the two big village sponsors. So when you're coming to camp, you'll get to stay in either the Maxon village or the Octane Render village, which is going to be so much fun.
You have your own flag.
Have your own flag, right? Yeah. We've also got Pixel Plow. Ty's been great sponsoring that. He's one of our gold sponsor, and our bronze sponsors, of course, School of Motion, Red Giant, and Insidium. So huge shout out to all of our sponsors. Without them, so give them some love online and tell them thanks for sponsoring Camp Mograph. So it's going to be amazing.
Tokyo Megaplex says, I can't believe Maxon and Otoy are spending money to help us not use computers. So if you want to find out more information about that, you can go to campmograph.com, and just so I can put it in your head here, I'm just going to play this one more time. Camp Mograph.
This is more of a retreat.
Beautiful Vermont. Good craft beers there. Fishing, swimming,
Canoeing, rock climbing.
Principles of animation, color theory.
Stop motion. No computers at all.
Yeah, I really want to go.
Sounds like a lot of fun.
Are you going
Camp Mograph.
Let's tutorialize feeling good now.
Entire YMCA summer camp. Workshops, non-traditional.
You're a valued person. Your career is important.
Hiking with Casey Hupke.
Do a morning jog.
Breakfast, lunch, and dinner every single day.
campfire.
Every single day. Bunk bed. Every single day. October in Vermont. Destination place. Leaves are changing.
Beautiful.
So much fun, y'all.
Yeah, I really want to go.
Sounds like a lot of fun.
Are you going Camp Mograph?
Anyway, check it out, y'all. we do have a Camp Mograph song that has been written as well.
Yeah,
So,
what's going on with that?
I don't know.
I need to hit up Liam about
we
that.
We got time.
Because it's actually pretty good. It's really good.
Yeah, it'll be our little anthem. So, before we get out of here, speaking of Beeple, let's do Beeple's People. There's some really good ones this week, and I'm including your meme in here too. We'll get to that in a second.
All right.
I
got a lot of love. I got a few followers on Twitter for that.
Really?
Yeah.
Man, he has just been on fire lately. I'm telling you, man. Like, all right. So the first one we're gonna do is get out your Beeple viewer of choice. I forgot to say that. Mine is Twitter. You know, go to June 8th, Year of our Lord 2019, and this one is called General Duplex. Duplex, right here. Check this out. And
you have an animated version of this one too?
We do, yeah. He's he's got the Google logo on him first of all, which I think is interesting.
Okay, cool.
And then there is an animated version of this right here. It always plays the dang audio. So again, with the tune shading, that's really cool. And notice everybody's saluting this dude. I love the cloth too. It's really great.
Yeah, the cloth is pretty.
So this General
Marvelous
Duplex,
or if it's actually like C40E cloth.
I've got some like ideas for this guy though. Like, you know, when there's the combination of like AI and humans and all that, and there's all this intelligence and all these new robots and stuff. I'm feeling like this guy is like super important, and everybody fears him. And I mean, look at everybody salute him, especially that last guy. Like he just pulls that arm.
Oh, and there's
up.
big people in the background. Did you see that?
No, I didn't. Where's that?
Yeah, look, there's one big people.
Oh, and he's saluting.
Yeah.
Right. So this guy's pretty big.
Oh, there's another one.
Wow.
But it's more of a Cyberman type thing, you know?
Yeah. But that one's great. Let's go to this next one. This is like, I want to get a print of this. This is June 12th.
Yeah, it's very pretty.
Soul Suck. Man, this is just so awesome. And again, like he's been doing like these kind of painted effects that you almost can't see unless you blow it up and really experience it. And he's got people running from this deal, and I love what you did. You immediately created a meme out of this. Client,
well,
I have just
in my defense, it was Chad Ashley that said, "How long until we see a Mograph memes of this?" And so I immediately saw that. And I was like, "Now."
Yeah.
Right now.
A client says, "I have just one more quick change," and you're getting sucked in, like we always do. Anyway.
Yep.
Man, this is just so great. I really am considering like trying to get a print of this.
Yeah. That's cool.
And then lastly,
it should be the next Louis Vuitton, shirt.
Right.
Yeah, the next $2,000 Louis Vuitton shirt.
I'll make my own shirt. I'll make my own shirt out of it.
Put the Louis Vuitton logo on it.
Yeah. And then lastly, we've got June 13th. This is Gigantica. And, I mean, first of all, you need something this big for General Duplex to live in. Or does he live in, does General Duplex, does General Duplex live in a duplex?
I have no idea.
Or is this more like duplex, like, telephony? Full duplex?
I don't.
Oh,
yeah,
no? Anyone? Okay. I think General Duplex should live on top of this. I think he should live in the top because
maybe.
Yeah. Is this made out of?
No, I think that's just like in a.
Are those the little? What are those made out of?
Are
those like the little cargo containers? I can't tell.
I think so. Yeah,
it's kind of small.
Pretty sure they're cargo containers.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the new apartments. Like people who live in there have to live in the apartments, and then the people down on the ground, they're the 1%ers.
It's just weird that everybody in the future doesn't know how to run cabling correctly. It's just all over the place.
Well, they don't have the resources for it anymore.
Yeah, I guess
you
not.
know, they just have to.
Can't
just
run it
deal
straight down. Have to do it at an angle. You know, I don't know. Anyway, yeah, that's all I have for that, yo. I don't know.
Sweet.
Yeah, I think that was a really good show. I enjoyed that today.
Yeah.
So
I've noticed a big difference from the first time we had Jules on to like now. Like I've been so inundated into the Octane, vernacular and stuff that I can actually.
It's a little easier to understand. Yeah,
it's a lot easier. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So coming up in the next 3 weeks, we got Chris Schmidt. That's going to be really fun. I need to talk to him. Like, what are we going to talk about, man? Like,
man, what aren't we going to talk about?
Man, I'm so excited. We got to think about that a little bit. And then, of course, like we said, the week after is Casey Hupke. We'll talk about health and wellness. And then Josh Johnson will be on the week after that. So looking forward to that.
Wait, go back.
What?
When's Casey Hupke on?
2 weeks from
Isn't
today.
Penny? When's Penny coming on?
I don't know, man. I don't know.
Right.
I'll look at the schedule and see. So
we got Penny coming on too.
on the same day?
No, I'm looking.
Oh, yeah.
Because I thought.
Oh, yeah, we added Penny.
We have her down for the 8th.
For the 8th.
She's coming on the 8th.
That's right. Yeah.
Josh Johnson is 2 weeks after Casey Hupke. So after Casey is Penny.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we actually just added her the other day, so I don't have any of the promo pieces written up for that.
Way to go, Dave.
Yeah, so that's about it. You can rate us on iTunes, leave a review. You can also subscribe on your podcatcher of choice. It helps get our ratings up. And the newsletter, you can subscribe to our newsletter. We're going to start sending some stuff out, hopefully later this year. You can say
we've been sending stuff out.
Like the Camp Mograph stuff. But we got
like
some other things. We're starting to release some more videos and things like that. You can say you've been there, done that, got the t-shirt with the Mograph logo tee. It's on Amazon. All of these are on Amazon. The Paul Babb, Feel the Babb 2020 shirt, all the profits from that go to Doctors Without Borders. Render Things shirt, hoodie, and long sleeve tee, whichever one you want. And don't forget, that Render is Fire shirt just introduced as well. Just so you can sport that at like SIGGRAPH or something. I don't know.
Yep.
But
wearing my Raid Zero shirt today.
Yeah, I'm wearing my Bob's Burgers thing. And that's about it. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Periscope, YouTube, Mograph.com, all the stuff and things. And we're gonna get out of here. Yay! Thanks for being on, everybody. We'll catch you next week. Until next week, I'm Dave.
And I'm Matt.
Have a good one.
Later, yo.
Wrong. Let's listen to this instead. This is much better.
Aww. That hurts my feelings.
Feels good. Feels good, bro.